news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock, I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GB News Tonight. Now, white British kids are the country's most disadvantaged, but don't tell that to the race-baiting BBC, who have come under fire for teaching so-called white privilege to impressionable youngsters in the classroom. So, has our woke-obsessed national broadcaster finally lost the trust of British parents? Not before time. That's the big debate with my panel, and tonight, I am joined by Allison Pearson, I've got Albion Ancona, and I've got Nigel Nelson. We've shaken it up this Thursday evening in a good way, people, in a very good way. But before that, I will tell you why the likes of left-wing rabble-rouser Steve Coogan should stick his Britain-hating rhetoric where the sun doesn't shine after his lame attack on the royal family's supporters. My patriotic perspective on Coogan's Alan Partridge moment is next. Also tonight, after Shamima Begum's appeal to return to the UK entered its 3rd and final day, should the runaway ISIS bride be forever expelled? It comes as a new poll shows that 74% of people want foreign nationals who sympathise with terrorists to be deported. I want to know what the rest of them are thinking, but Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane and human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan, they do battle. That's in the clash. Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie also lets rip this hour at the senior NatWest staff who joked about kicking Nigel Farage out of a car and driving him out of the country, not least the pay rise for their former boss. And the mum of the tragically murdered James Bulger hit town. This is at her son's killer because he's getting a private parole hearing to, quote, protect his mental health. Absolutely disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. No-nonsense former Tory Prisons Minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in on twisted John Venables. That's happening very shortly. And a very special treat for you in the next hour or two. Yes, I was keeping this one under wraps, but I can now finally reveal it. I sat down with superstar Conservative US commentator Candace Owens earlier tonight for a UK exclusive interview as she unleashed on the trans madness gripping both sides of the Atlantic.
Called it sex education. I have to tell you, we cannot call it that because that is how they are trying to hide this. This is not about education. This is not about sex. This is something much more nefarious that is going on.
Yeah, you're not going to want to miss that. Let me tell you, she also doesn't hold back on the Duke and Duchess of Privacy, Harry and Meghan. Yeah, it really is going to kick right off. You'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, and top royal authors Lady C and Phil Dampier react to a brand new trailer of Netflix The Crown. So if you've not seen it, we'll show it to you. That portrays the death of Princess Diana. Is that another step too far? A blockbuster 2 hours coming right after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story on GB News tonight is that the MP Crispin Blunt has been arrested on suspicion of rape and the possession of controlled substances. The member for Reigate identified himself on social media earlier on this afternoon as the man Surrey Police detained in Hawley yesterday morning. Surrey Police confirmed a man was released on conditional police bail, pending their further inquiries. Mr Blunt has been removed from the Conservative Party and he's been asked to stay away from Parliament. The former minister said he'll cooperate fully with the ongoing police investigation and he said he's confident he won't be charged. Meanwhile, in other news today, the UK's border force is in Egypt, with the Prime Minister confirming officers have pre-positioned themselves to help British nationals escape Gaza when the border reopens. Cabinet ministers held an emergency Cobra meeting this morning to address the escalating crisis in the Middle East. The government's pushing for a pause in fighting, rejecting calls for a full ceasefire to facilitate aid reaching Palestinians. And that comes as leaders at an EU summit in Brussels have agreed to call for humanitarian corridors to get urgently needed aid into Gaza. Well, on that, the UN says the world is failing to meet the basic human rights of the people of Gaza. Humanitarian Chief Martin Griffiths is warning that aid just isn't getting into Gaza quickly enough and that Israel's bombardment is getting worse. UN aid agencies have begun to reduce their operations in the area because, they say, they've almost run out of fuel. Israel refuses to let fuel supplies in because it says Hamas could use them for military purposes and insists it's only targeting the terrorist group. In other news today, the Prime Minister has warned that artificial intelligence could threaten humanity with extinction on a similar scale to global pandemics or nuclear war. His comments came after touring a London eye hospital which uses AI to diagnose sight problems. Rishi Sunak says humanity could lose control of AI and criminals and terrorist groups could use it to spread fear and destruction. He also announced the formation of the world's first AI Safety Institute in the UK to explore the risks and share the data. Now, an aristocrat and her partner have denied all charges after the death of their little baby. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon are both accused of manslaughter of their daughter Victoria, but have pleaded not guilty during a hearing at the Old Bailey today. That's after police found the remains of their daughter at an allotment near Brighton in March after a major search of the area. A trial's now been set for January the 2nd, with a further pre-trial hearing listed for December the 8th. And lastly, Remembrance poppies will be plastic-free this year and recyclable in the first redesign of the iconic emblem in a generation. It's part of a move by the Royal British Legion to reduce the production of single-use plastics. From today, volunteers and supermarkets will be selling the historic symbol worn annually to honour the service and sacrifice of Britain's armed forces in conflicts over the decades. Each poppy sold raises money to support surviving veterans as well as serving personnel and is worn from the last Friday of the month of October. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Steve Coogan thinks you're a flag-waving idiot. He said that he thinks that people who support the monarchy are essentially thick.
I am an anti-monarchist. Most of the people who are into it all, those flag-waving plastic boater people, are just, I think, are kind of idiots because they support a power structure that keeps a foot on the throat of working-class people. Yeah. And I'm just not very keen on that kind of thing.
More on his working-class credentials later, but that is one way to alienate nearly two-thirds of the entire nation. It's a good job he's not running for office, isn't it? Because he'd have just lost the vote in one swoop. But talking of running for office, This multi-millionaire anti-monarchist trot endorsed Jeremy Corbyn for leader, and he helped host a rally for him. So he said the Tory tactic was to try to make this a choice between Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn. But this has backfired as people, and here we go, and I readily admit to being one of them, have started to listen to what Jeremy Corbyn says rather than what other people have been saying about him. Well, that's actually even worse for his reputation, because if you're actually taking note of the things that Corbyn says and the things that he's done, then, well, you know, here we go. Coogan tried to get a man elected who invited 2 IRA members to Parliament 2 weeks after the Brighton bombing, was photographed at a rally in front of a Hezbollah flag, accepted 20 grand for appearing on a state TV channel of terror-sponsoring Iranian regime, signed a letter defending the Lockerbie bombing suspects, criticised the drone strike that killed Jihadi John, shared a platform with representatives of extremist cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, attended a rally with members of Band al-Mujahroon, and was constantly dogged by anti-Semitism claims. And that's just a short list of Corbyn's greatest hits. Steve Coogan thinks that you're an idiot, but he's the one who thought that Diane Abbott was fit to hold high office, and it doesn't get much thicker than that, does it, Steve? He is reported to have said that he thought the Queen was all right. All right? So, our longest-serving monarch, arguably this country's greatest ever human being. I think she was a bit more than all right, mate. He says that he thinks the monarchy is part of a system that keeps its foot on the throat of the working class. Well, the former Ferrari-driving, loaded magazine-editing, glamour model-loving champagne socialist clearly knows what he's on about, doesn't he, really? But when I look at these people now on the Mall, gearing up for the coronation, I see happiness, I see joy, I see innocence, in a way. I see community, I see patriotism, I see good things. What kind of sad, miserable little man looks at that and slags it off? He has made millions of pounds by ordinary men and women paying to come and see him perform, paying his wages. And now it turns out he's probably thought that you were thick and hated you all along. The plebs, the hordes of idiots. Well, you might want to bear that in mind the next time he's asking you to pay money to watch one of his films or his shows. And I actually feel a bit sorry for Steve, to be honest. I really do. How can somebody with so much talent, who has brought so much joy to so many others with his comedy, be so cold, dead, miserable and petty inside? Let's get the thoughts of my panel, shall we? Daily Telegraph columnist Allison Pearson. We've got GB News contributor, fan favourite, Albion Moncona. And we've got GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson as well. Allison, your views?
On Steve Coogan?
On Steve Coogan, well, saying that we're all flag-waving idiots.
Well, as a flag-waving idiot, I think I'd rather go for a drink with Alan Partridge than with his creator, Steve Coogan. As you said so brilliantly, Patrick, multi-millionaire socialist has got very, very wealthy on the backs of lots of us flag-waving idiots. I thought it was quite extraordinary that he said that the royals support this system with a foot on the throat of the working class. In fact, the King Charles, as the Prince of Wales, has done more for, disadvantaged young people, working class people, than Steve Coogan ever has. So I think he's a complete hypocrite. And also, as you say, joyless, because the vast majority of people in this country, they love the monarchy, they admire it. It's a system that's for unifying people, times of, in hard times and in good times. Okay. So he is, for a comedian, he's not very funny, is he?
Oh, but is Steve Coogan really a joyless hypocrite?
Do we think we're maybe being a little bit ungenerous here? Was he maybe trying to tell a joke and it was just a really bad joke and it wasn't actually very funny? Right. Steve Coogan as a comedian I find hilarious. Alan Partridge is very funny. He says he's not a monarchist. He's obviously a Republican. But in 2012, he said that whilst he was a monarchist, he caveated and said that he had a huge and enormous respect for the late Queen. He thinks that people who've displayed a conscientious duty like the Queen deserve great respect. So maybe your comment about the Queen was a little bit unfair. Okay. Because actually in this Telegraph article, he actually talks about how he admires the Queen. I think calling people flag-waving idiots is not really very helpful. I'm a flag-waving idiot too. But I think maybe he just told a bad joke and it's fallen a bit flat. OK. Nigel, your views on this? Have you been on the old champagne socialist circuit with Steve at all?
No, I have not. No. Not one of my favourite people. Again, I think he's a great comedian, yeah. He was the one who was having a go at the press, if you remember, and...
oh, yes!
...through hacked off and so on. Yes. I'm a monarchist, but not a royalist, which means I'm not a flag-waving idiot, but I don't think the people who wave flags at the royal family are idiots.
No.
So if you want to support the royal family, that's great. Steve Coogan is completely wrong about the idea that the king has somehow trampled on working people. The king hasn't got any power. That the importance of having a monarch is to have a non-political head of state who keeps the constitution nice and stable.
But it's this self-hating Britishness that we see in so many celebrities. So Coogan and his like would happily wave a Palestinian flag, but they think anyone who waves the Union Jack has got something wrong with them, whereas most people think it's the other way round, don't they?
That's true, isn't it?
Yes, it is true. But in the argument that he has made, has he not just reeled off the greatest hits of what Republicans always say about the royal family? This is a pretty banal argument against the royal family, saying that they are standing on the throats of working-class people. Alison is right. It's not true, but this is just a pretty common Republican argument and why we're getting so outraged.
I think it speaks volumes. So as you know, a guy who relies on people coming to watch what he does and paying money to watch what he does, and which, by the way, I mean, the guy is a legend. I never thought when I was growing up that I would find myself ever sitting on a sofa on national television criticising the guy that's made some of the greatest TV comedy that I've ever seen. I do want to make that clear, but it does imply to me, Nigel, that maybe he thinks most people in his audiences were plebs.
Well, that's what it sounds like. And to start sort of slugging them off, I mean, I don't know how many flag-waving royalists there would be who actually watch Steve Coogan.
I reckon loads of them.
And probably a lot. And probably a lot. So we seem to actually have agreed here that we think he's a great comic, a great actor, but not really much of a human being.
Oh, strong. So you do not like it. I've rarely seen you get this accent. You and I have spoken about Shamima Begum. You and I have spoken about... You care more passionately about Steve Coogan than you do about an ISIS bride. He must have really rubbed you up the wrong way, mate. I'm telling you.
What would be really great would be to have Alan Partridge with us on the sofa on Steve Coogan. Now, that would be worth hearing, Patrick.
That would be worth hearing. Yeah. Maybe he could come deep undercover, actually. And look, do you think that people should boycott his shows?
No, I don't believe in boycotting anyone, but I just think people should see his far lefty views in context with his vast wealth and patronising ordinary working people who get a huge amount of pleasure out of the royal family.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, when you see or hear people that appear to lecture others and at times, sign letters alongside other celebrities that appear to lecture people about, virtues and nice moral behaviour, and then you hear so many stories about some of these people. You think, But there we go. Anyway, loads of you, thank you very much for getting in touch. You can email in gbviews@gbnews.com. But next, after it was revealed that a senior member of staff at NatWest joked about driving Nigel Farage out of the country and even kicking him out of a moving car, I get the reaction of Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie, who's been kicked out of a few moving cars in his time. He's ready to let rip on the wokesters running the bank. He's live shortly, but up next in The Clash, after Shamima Begum's appeal to return to the UK entered its third and final day today, should the runaway ISIS bride be expelled forever? It comes off the back of a GB News poll that's found that 74% of people think that anyone who's a foreign national who supports a terrorist organisation should be booted out straight away. Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane, human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan, they do battle in just a few moments. Don't move.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Yeah, all action coming your way. Kelvin Mackenzie and Widdicombe, they're coming up this hour, as well, a little bit later on, as a big exclusive interview with global superstar Candace Owens. Do not miss that. But time now for The Clash. So Britain's repulsion at foreign nationals glorifying Islamist terrorism on our streets has been laid bare. It's a damning new People's poll that we conduct here at GB News. Now, it shows a staggering 74% of Brits think that foreign citizens should be expelled from the UK if they openly support the kind of barbarity that we saw in Israel on October the 7th. And before people pipe up, this isn't a poll of GB News viewers and listeners. No, this is a national poll. Our exclusive survey, carried out by the pollster Professor Matt Goodwin, also shows that just 4% of us think that they should be allowed to stay. So just 4% of people think that people who support a foreign terror group should be allowed to stay. It comes as runaway ISIS bride Shamima Begum continued her court fight today to win back her British citizenship after being stripped of it by the government for joining the terrorist death cult. Her lawyers at the Court of Appeal argued the move was unlawful. But look, in light of all of that, and in light of that latest poll, what do you think? Should Shamima Begum be allowed to return to Britain? Let me know your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you those results very shortly. But we're going to go head-to-head on this now, and doing battle is broadcaster and author and historian, as well. It is... no, it's not. Sorry, we were supposed to have David Oldroyd-Bolt, but we have had some last-minute changes. Thank you very much. We've got author... we've got human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan, and we've also got Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane. Apologies about that. We're off to an absolute flyer here, aren't we? Look, Rebecca, I'll start with you. I see you've got your poppy on early doors as well. What do you think? Do you think that Shamima Begum should be allowed to stay or return to Britain or not?
Absolutely not, no. I think that to even consider that is a national security threat, and I think that anybody that would support her to come back is risking the lives that people are here. You know, this is somebody who has absolutely no qualms in seeing severed heads. She says at times that she's had no regrets about her actions, and she actually had a good time. She also has she's moved on from her 3 dead children, and she is now happy. This is a person who sewed suicide bombers into their vests. Like, we can never forget the atrocities that this terror group have created, that she took herself to, and going through extreme measures, and we should never, ever allow her back in Britain.
OK, now, so just 4% of the British population are keen for people like Shamima to stay in Britain. I mean, those 4% appear to be entirely made up of lawyers on the take, rabid human rights brigades, charity workers, etc., maybe even some terrorist sympathisers themselves.
OK, I don't really know how to answer that question, if that's what we're starting off with. But no, I think, of course she should be brought back. Her British citizenship is just as valuable as anyone else's. She was born in the UK, brought up here. She was a child, a teenager. And as we now know, she was groomed into it. British intelligence services, other Western, Canadian intelligence, everyone was complicit in how she ended up there. And definitely the UK government should have and could have easily stopped it, and they didn't. So considering all of that, I think, of course, she should be both legally, morally, in every way. There's just no reason we should leave her there.
Morally and in every way, Rebecca, we've got to keep her.
How can we be so convinced that she is no longer a threat? She was groomed, radicalised, whatever terms that you want to use. She took some horrendous action. She's clearly shown absolutely no remorse, truly, until she's decided to start changing her tune because she wants to be a celebrity. Narcissist personality disorder is something that is ingrained into a person, and they want attention, whether it's negative attention or positive attention. They don't care. It's what attention. So how can we be convinced that somebody has been so groomed that they're not still groomed to actually come back to Britain?
She was supposedly
horrendous crime.
She was supposedly a straight A student. You say she was a young teenager. She was 15. Quite a lot of people in this country want 16-year-olds to have the vote, including potentially the next Prime Minister, possibly Sir Keir Starmer. So I would question the idea that she was dragged there kicking and screaming against her will and that easily manipulated. She wasn't actually that thick.
I'm not suggesting she was thick. I don't know if anyone did suggest that. But I'm just saying she was a child. And, legally, technically, she was a child. Of course she was. She can't vote, she can't drive, she can't drink. So I don't know why we think, she needs to be... If she made that mistake at that age...
Loads of people think that, loads of people think in this country that people a lot younger than that know exactly what they're doing when they want to irreversibly change their gender and things. A lot of people are trying to have it both ways here, where they say, oh, she was just a child, but then there's an interesting Venn diagram of the political spectrum in this country that also think that kids should be able to vote, that also think that, people in primary schools know what they're doing when they want to change sex, etc. I'm just not sure it all adds up entirely for people. Shoaib, I'll just stick with you on this, though, right? Shouldn't we be going for what the majority of the British people think? And at least 74% of them would rather her go. Only 4% of people would want her to stay.
Firstly, it depends on the question you ask. It depends who you ask. It depends on who conducted the... It depends who was asked. So I'm not sure how, reliable...
Well, it's a proper poll, right? It's a proper poll done by professional pollster Professor Matt Goodwin, who does polls. It's a national poll. So it's the thing, it's a survey. It's as good as any other poll, right? So that's what we've got to go on.
That's my point. And that's my point. None of these polls actually say, because we have seen recently with the immigration policies, Rwanda policy, others, literally on the same day, 2 newspapers publishing polls saying completely opposite things. That's what the public told them. So I'm not sure polls are particularly reliable, and especially, bad cases, severe cases, serious cases make for bad law. So we can't be pushed into changing. If the law is what it is, then we need to follow that regardless of that person is. So whatever she did, we can't just abandon her, desert her, leave her stranded in a Syrian camp for the rest of her life for that one mistake she made. And secondly, even in terms of the national security, the point is are we actually safer with her miles away? We have no idea what she's up to, who she's meeting, what she's doing. Are we seriously thinking she physically has to be here to cause us any harm? What we're doing is, yes, we're causing her further resentment. Right, yes, we're creating further hatred for the British society. So why not have her here?
We're calling Rebecca. She made one mistake. And that's it.
No. She did a whole lot of mistakes. And do you know what? To actually go to the lengths that she did to travel to where she did at such a young age shows her absolute determination. You know, and when you can't back something up with facts, you attack. And that's exactly what is happening here with attacking the poll. People's opinions matter. Whoever they are people who voted, and they are people that should be listened to. You still haven't answered me the question. You're talking about, obviously, that she may still create harm from being a further distance away. So what happens if we allow her back and she goes on to do another event like the Manchester bombing arena, which that group did do? What do we do then? What happens?
Go on, Show.
Yeah, well, that would be a failure of British intelligence and security. And
it's always somewhat, to be fair, Shoaib, it is...
Intelligence are saying don't bring her back.
Shoaib, it is all... I must say, I admire Shoaib. I always admire... I know we speak regularly. No, I actually genuinely do. I do enjoy our conversations, but I really admire your ability to make every single thing somebody else's fault all the time.
No, but if we know she's potentially a threat and we're bringing her back and we still can't keep an eye on a 20-something-year-old woman...
They're saying that. You're saying this. The government are saying she should not be brought back, and you're saying about British intelligence. Does that not tell you that British intelligence know she should not be brought back?
All right, Shoaib.
Like you should be fighting for her.
All right, Shoaib, go on, Shoaib, go on.
No, you asked if she is brought back. So yeah, if she's brought back, we need to monitor her. We know what she's capable of. We need to keep an eye. If she's committed any offences, she needs to be in prison anyway. So why are we bringing her back, letting her loose, allowing her to commit these offences?
All right.
Just like we do with murderers and rapists. They go to jail, they come out. We don't keep them locked up.
Well, we do deport some of them if they're not British. We do that.
Yes, but that's even more unfair. A British murderer comes out after a few years and then he's free. A foreign murderer serves his prison sentence, then gets deported. So, of course, that's actually double standards. That's unfair. If we can...
No, it's not.
How are we sure the British criminal won't reoffend? Are we sure about that? Do we have...
It's not double standards, is it? It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Why would you want to keep somebody in your country? It's just part of it. It's not double standards, is it? It's just the way it is. If you've got another passport...
It's not double standards. She's paying the consequences of what she's done.
One gets punished twice. Of course it's double standard. And especially in this case, she was British. We just decided we don't know. She was born in the UK. It's not as if she somehow...
Can I just say, Show, where that argument completely falls down, and I'm really glad that you've actually made it, right, is that people say that, oh, this is egregious for her. Now, I'm white British, but if I'd have gone to join ISIS, the government could have treated me exactly the same way as Shamima Begum, because I could have a Cypriot passport and I could have an Irish passport and I could be out on my backside. The problem here is that she went to join ISIS. The problem here is that she did that. But it's not the problem with British justice and a double standard. None of this would have happened if she hadn't gone to join a jihadi death cult, Shoaib. And we can't get around that, can we?
Hundreds of people have had their citizenship revoked over the past few years. How many white people do we know? I know there's just one white person.
Loads of them died,
screams his name.
Shoaib, loads of them died over there. Loads of them got blown up over there because they went to join ISIS and they died, right? So...
Why is everything about race?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Why are we making this about race? Why not just look at her actions?
How many white people did the Home Office deprive of the British citizenship? That's what I'm asking.
How many white people cleared off to join a terrorist group?
Yeah, exactly. It's such a niche case. Exactly. It's such a niche case. It's such a niche case. They could do it, and that's the point. Look, both of you, thank you very much. Thank you. That's enough. We're way over time. We are way over time. Thank you very much. Shoaib Khan there and Rebecca Jane. Right, OK, so who do you agree with? After Shamima Begum's appeal to return to the UK entered its third and final day, should the runaway ISIS bride be forever expelled? Thank you. Lynn on Twitter says, I don't think the courts should decide. The British public should have a say, seeing as it's our safety at risk. I agree with you. The British public have had a say, Lynn, at every single opportunity. When they're always asked whether they want tighter immigration laws, both legal and illegal, they always say the same thing, and politicians never do it. Sean on Twitter says Begum should never come anywhere near Britain again. She's still a dangerous extremist. OK. Bunty on Twitter says Shamima Begum was a 15-year-old kid preyed upon and groomed by evil extremists. She's a victim and the British courts should recognise this. OK, fine. She can go and be a victim in Syria, though, can't she? But now your verdict is in. 91% of you agree that Shamima Begum should be forever expelled from Britain. 9% of you say she shouldn't. Right, coming up, I've sat down with superstar US commentator Candace Owens earlier for an exclusive interview. She absolutely tees off. She's brilliant. I love Candace. And she lets rip on the trans madness, gripping both sides of the Atlantic. I've got a sneak preview for you.
Called it sex education. I have to tell you, we cannot call it that, because that is how they are trying to hide this. This is not about education. This is not about sex. This is something much more nefarious that is going on.
She is a rock star, and she's coming up very, very shortly. You don't want to miss it. But next, after it was revealed that a senior member of staff at NatWest joked about driving Nigel Farage out of the country and even kicking him out of a moving car, I get the reaction of Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie, who is ready to let rip on the wokesters running the bank. He joins me live. That's in a few minutes. Stay tuned.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe later tonight, but first it's time for Fleet Street icon Calvin Mackenzie. Now look, is the reputation of Coutts Bank hanging in the balance? Well, tomorrow we are likely to find out as the NatWest board release their quarterly figures following a meeting earlier today. It comes as Nigel Farage called for the bank to slash the severance pay for former boss Dame Allison Rose, which could rake in more than £10 million in pay, bonuses and stock. Yeah, seriously, look at the numbers involved there. Rose left the bank after acknowledging that she had inaccurately briefed a BBC journalist about the reasons for closing Farage's account. And yesterday, a watchdog ruled that Rose broke data rules for sharing that information. So there's quite a lot wrong here, all right? A heck of a lot wrong, actually. Kelvin joins me now. Is Nigel right to demand that the disgraced former CEO, Dame Allison Rose, shouldn't get a bumper payout, Kelvin?
Nigel has been right about this from day one. An enormously successful one-man campaign. Had that been you or me or most people, we would be debanked and that would be the end of it. What his research shows is that at the heart of Coots, they had a wealth committee and they all sat around sending each other emails saying disobliging things about one of their customers. What an incredible moment. Why on earth should Allison Rose get one single penny? Now, I do understand she may have some earned shares or something like that, and they may find it difficult to get out of that. Beyond that, she should get not a single penny. She ran effectively a corrupt organization that if they didn't like you at NatWest, actually at Coots, this was a subsidiary, then they would try and get rid of you as a customer. It's a disgrace. And on top of that, and this is right to Rose's door, actually, when push came to shove, she was prepared to make up a story to tell the BBC actually the wrong reason why Nigel was pushed out. It is an absolute disgrace. And this is a public company of which you, me, and everybody watching this output tonight own 40% of it. We own 40% of this bank, the NatWest, and it's been a great wake-up call. All the other banks have had to fall in line. Lloyd's have had to have offered him an account now. This would never ever have happened had it not been for the single bravery and courage of Nigel Farage. And what this country needs, it's quite clear to me, is we need a dozen Nigel Farages, and we don't need Starmers, we don't need Sunaks, we need people who actually are prepared to actually expose their bank account to the nation. But what about the Wealth Committee at Coots? All writing emails to each other saying, what are so-and-so Farages? We'll drive him out of the country.
I'd throw a milkshake over him. I'd throw a milkshake over him. People will think he's skin. I'll drive him out of the country. Now, look, if people like that were prepared to make comments like that about a man with the profile that Nigel Farage has, OK? What are they saying about you? What are they saying about, Doreen from number 42? All right, she might not have a wealth account, but she may well have an account with NatWest. She might have an account with RBS. She might have an account with anyone else, Barclays, whoever it is. What are they saying about you lot? Yeah? It does indicate, it does really indicate that they think you're scum,
Well, the truth about the matter is I bank at Coots, right? And do you know what? My standing at Coots has gone massively up. Previously, I was unwanted. I was beneath the salt. Now, honestly, I can't. I'm not joking with you. They are so pleasant to me, as though I'm Lord Kelv of Fleet Street or something. It is fantastic. And this is entirely down to Nigel.
Oh, there you go. So Nigel's made you... an even more privileged human being, I suppose. But yeah, look, when it comes to her actual pay, I mean, in no other walk of life, right? In no other walk of life could you enact a policy that doesn't make you any money. Being woke does not make you any money in that sector. I'm convinced of it. It doesn't. In fact, there are example after example after example of companies going woke and going broke, or just near as damn it going broke, OK? So you've got a bad ideology there that infects a load of staff, creates a massive scandal, the likes of which may well win Nigel some awards, actually, for journalism. Then, on top of that, you lie to the media, you break confidentiality rules, you throw a load of your staff under the bus. Here's 10 million quid. You're taking the mick.
Right. That is not going to happen. I mean, two things are going to happen tomorrow. NatWest are going to announce record that their numbers are 2 or 3 times what they were last year, because what happens is when interest rates go up, their profits go up, right? Because they don't give you what they're making. Okay, but the other thing is that if they're wise, if they've got good numbers, they're not going to announce the Allison Rose deal, because the only thing that will get any coverage tomorrow will be what she's likely to get. I suspect in the end she'll still get a couple of million quid, or perhaps even slightly more. and everybody will go mad.
I don't know.
There is nothing but bad publicity heading their way.
You know, I don't usually disagree with you on that much, Kelvin, to be fair, but I think, you know, you've got a lady here who has won a very, very, very top job, who's, you know, overseen a kind of woke agenda, as it were, and I very much doubt that they're going to not give her whatever she feels she's worth, if that makes sense. I think that she would cause a massive, massive hoo-ha there. I think it's easier to just pay her, take the heat for paying her, hide behind a contract and just let it all go.
Well, I think that the chairman has made clear where he stands on it. He said she did a fantastic job and it's a very unfortunate end to her career. Actually, what he should have said was she made a huge error and I'm afraid she's going to have to pay for it. Now, the real question is, when this is all over, will anybody else hire her? That's the next issue. Would anybody in the finance industry hire her? And I find that I don't think that's possible.
Well, interesting, but let's be honest, she's not going to need another job, is she? She's not going to need another job. Absolutely not. Look, thank you very much, Kelvin. Great to have you on the show, as always. Kelvin McKenzie there, Fleet Street icon. Now, a NatWest Group spokesperson said this. We've written to Mr Farage to apologise sincerely for the deeply inappropriate comments made about him and the poor behaviours displayed. Neither are consistent with the standards of service that our clients should expect. We are determined to learn the necessary lessons from this so that in the future we live up to the high expectations of our clients and the ones they rightly place upon us. That's nice, isn't it? OK, yeah. Well, like I was saying, that was Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie. Thank you very, very much. Coming up, as BBC Newsround, good story this, great story actually, as BBC Newsround is exposed for teaching kids about white privilege, is the broadcaster indoctrinating British children with its own woke ideology? You will not believe some of the facts that come out of this. Of course, my panel returns to thrash that one out later. But look, next, 30 years after the murder of James Bulger, one of the most sickening crimes ever witnessed in the UK. Should the toddler's killer, John Venables, be made to face a public parole hearing for his new crimes? Apparently he won't. Why? To protect his mental health. I speak to no-nonsense former Tory Prisons Minister Anne Widdecombe, who weighs in on twisted John Venables. She'll also be ready to let rip on the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Stay tuned for all of that. It's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
An exclusive interview with American conservative commentator, global superstar Candace Owens. That's still to come, but it's time now for former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe. And the vicious murder of 2-year-old James Bulger was the crime that shocked the nation in 1993, and it's echoed ever since, hasn't it? Killers John Venables and Robert Thompson, both aged 10 at the time, snatched the toddler from outside a butcher's shop in Bootle, Merseyside. They brutally tortured the poor boy to death. Unfortunately, we all know the story, don't we? James's brave mother has now spoken of her fury that Twisted Venables will not face a public parole hearing. Denise Fergus spoke out after it was staggeringly revealed that the 40-year-old's legal team feared that an open session would cause Venables emotional stress. Oh, we've got to look after his mental health, have we? He is currently serving time for having indecent images of children and has twice been sent back to prison for breaching conditions, OK? So that's the kind of person that we're talking about here. Anne Widdecombe joins me now. Anne, thank you very much. Should he be forced to face a public parole hearing, do you think?
No. I think it's right that he has a private hearing. I would say that about anybody, because indeed a lot of medical evidence will be heard, a lot of questions about mental health will be heard. Somebody having to put all that on the line to be examined doesn't want it to be public, and I see no reason to make a show trial out of it. However, having said all of that, and I stand by that, I know it's unpopular, but I stand by it.
No, it's fair enough, Anne. It's fair enough.
But having said that, I would be staggered, and I really would be, if the parole board released him now, because he clearly does have mental health problems. He's twice been returned to prison. What has it been about? It's been about paedophile material, which is worrying because of the original offence. And I think it's got to be cleared up properly, and his issues have got to be cleared up properly before he is released, because yes, he didn't actually commit paedophile offences, he looked at paedophile stuff, but every time you look at something like that, some child has been abused in order for you to be able to see it.
Look, you know, what do we know about him? Right? We know that he killed and tortured James Bulger in the most brutal way. People say, well, he was 10 years old at the time. I think the manner in which that incident took place would imply to me that this was no kind of, minor thing at all. It obviously wasn't. And then you've got the kind of paedophilic tendencies that come after that. And you think, for both of those things alone, there's an argument to say that you can never recover from those things. You will always be a type of individual who should never be out on the streets. And I would be amazed if he came out again.
Before you say that, what we do know is that Bobby Thompson has never reoffended. He's obviously managed to come to terms with what he did. And he's lived, as far as anybody knows, a completely law-abiding life since. So it is possible. But Venables is obviously a completely different case. It hasn't been possible for him. And until those issues are resolved, he should just not be out. For the sake of public safety, he should not be out.
OK, I would argue that I don't think you can resolve those issues. Certainly the ones that he was sent back for, in terms of the images that he was looking at. But Anne, Bit of a shift in tone, this now. OK, so it's more bad news, I think, for the Conservatives. A devastating poll commissioned by us here at GBNews. It makes me laugh, this, by the way. Loads of people are going online, you're not reporting this, are you? You're not reporting this. Like we're trying to cover it up. We are reporting it. The only reason you know about it is because we did the poll and then reported it. But there you go. The poll commissioned by GBNews put Labour supporters nationally at 49%. The Tories on 21%. And you say in your Daily Express column that the Prime Minister has, quote, all the vision of a myopic clerk in a small office. Anne, tell us more.
Well, I mean, what you need...
Oh, well, what she said was that Rishi Sunak has all of the vision of a myopic clerk in a small office. Anne's back. Yes, all right, go on, Anne.
What I was saying was, and what I said in my Express column, if the Conservatives are to make any recovery at all, they need a leader with fire in his belly. And Rishi Sunak has no fire in his belly. His smirking, smug Chancellor...
Yeah, she's gone again. I think we'll leave it there. She has got a point, though, because earlier on I was reporting on Rishi Sunak's comments about AI, right, and how, essentially, it could kill us all, right? So, you know... And he was stood there at the plinth and he was talking completely dead behind the eyes, completely monotone. By the way, I think he's probably quite a nice guy, Rishi Sunak. I've got nothing against him. It's the delivery, isn't it? He's saying, you know, we're going to have to get this right now, otherwise we could be facing a dark future. And I thought, I actually, honestly, after listening to that, welcomed a future where AI did just finish us all off as quickly as possible. No charisma, nothing. How can you expect people to go and vote for you if you don't have what Anne Widdecombe would call fire in the belly? There we go. Well, against my better judgment, we're going to try Anne Widdecombe one more time. Nothing to do with you, Anne. I just don't want to go for the hat-trick of connection failures. Anne, you don't think he's got fire in the belly?
No, he's got no big ambition for Britain. He's got no big vision that he shares with us all. He just wants to keep everything frightfully steady, as if, you know, one bead on the abacus going wrong is the biggest disaster that could happen. And everything's falling down around him. And he appears to be supremely oblivious of all of this. You know, whatever else he may be, that is not a leader. A middle-ranking manager, possibly, but he is not a leader. And without a leader, your poll will be replicated at the general...
Well, but what does that mean then, Anne? So what you appear to be saying there is they need to get rid of him and get somebody else in.
No, I'm not going to say that either, because I think the Conservative Party is between a rock and a hard place. They've got an absolutely hopeless leader with whom they're not going to win. If they have another leadership election between now and the general election, the public really will just throw up its hands and say, enough. So
well, catch-22. So what we need then, Anne, what you're saying is, right, that we've got to get on the phone now to the personality transplant clinic, right, and try and inject something like Boris Johnson's personality, just the good bits of it, into Rishi Sunak, and we've got a year to make the public realise that. Look, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. It's not going to happen. You can't change the guy. You can't change the guy. You know, he should go, I think, afterwards and, you know, be very successful in the city or in America, I think possibly in America, and go and do that kind of stuff, which is what I think he will be better at. And why don't you run? You'd be good.
I'm not in Parliament, in case you haven't noticed.
Oh, no, will you get yourself back in there? You could do it.
No, thank you. I'm 76. Spare me. Just spare me.
All right, Anne, anyway, look, thank you very much. I think you've done enough for this nation, Anne, haven't you? You've done enough. Look, Anne Widdecombe there. Of course, former Tory minister, thank you very, very much. OK, so coming up, I sat down with superstar US commentator Candace Owens for a big exclusive interview. You will not want to miss her opinion. We've got her on women's rights. We've got her on J.K. Rowling. We've got her on the trans issues. Here's a little bit of it.
Those to J.K. Rowling because it takes bravery. It does take bravery to stand up to the mob and to say something that should be so abundantly obvious. Women are women and men are men.
That's every single thing she says is dynamite. But next, as BBC Newsround is exposed for teaching kids about white privilege, is the broadcaster indoctrinating British children with its own woke ideology? My panel are going to thrash that out in a few moments' time. You will not believe some of the material that the state broadcaster is showing to your kids. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It could be a bit foggy for some of us tonight, but there is further wet and blustery weather to come through the rest of the week. Low pressure sitting just to the west of the UK is bringing a showery, blustery theme to many parts of the UK. However, it's a front across the northeast that's already brought persistent rain for some here and will continue to do so across eastern parts of Scotland overnight. Cloud towards eastern parts of England will lower, bring some murkiness, some fog for some here, and elsewhere clear spells allowing for some fog patches to develop too. But temperatures not dropping a huge amount overnight, many places holding up in high single digits. So some fog, some mist around first thing on Friday morning. That will gradually clear. Persistent rain continuing across eastern parts of Scotland, likely to cause some further issues. Otherwise, it's a day of showers for many, starting off around western and southern coastal parts, but spreading inland as we go into the afternoon, and some of them could be heavy, possibly even thundery. Temperatures around average for the time of year, highs of around 15 Celsius in the south, a little bit cooler than this further north. Staying showery as we go through into Saturday, and some of those showers could still be heavy at times, most likely towards the southeast, where we're likely to see some impacts from those. Also more rain across eastern parts of Scotland, totals really continuing to build up as we go through the weekend. More unsettled weather then to come as we go through the weekend into the beginning of next week, but also something a little bit colder in the north. Bye-bye.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GB News Tonight. Now, the BBC stands accused of brainwashing Britain's children as a campaign group submits a formal complaint after Newsround published an article teaching kids the concept of white privilege. I think it went further than that, by the way. I've seen this article, I've seen that webpage, and I think it stated it as fact. Is our state broadcaster indoctrinating British kids with their own woke ideology? That's the big debate with my top panel of top pundits, and that is next, because I'm joined by Allison Pearson, Albie Amancona, and Nigel Nelson. There we go. We've mixed it up tonight, like I was saying, but in a very, very good way. Plus, one of the world's boldest and most controversial Conservative commentators, the wonderful Candace Owens, unleashes on the trans madness gripping both sides of the Atlantic. That is an exclusive interview that I've done with her. We're going to play you a bit of that. You won't want to miss this.
Those to J.K. Rowling, because it takes bravery. It does take bravery to stand up to the mob and to say something that should be so abundantly obvious. Women are women and men are men.
It's non-stop gold, I'm telling you, non-stop gold. And before the night is out, our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, they beam in live to tackle Steve Coogan branding monarchists flag-waving idiots. Plus, we will debate whether Netflix hit The Crown has handled the death of Princess Diana as sensitively as they promised.
It has all been a bit mad recently.
I'll bring you more of that emotional footage very, very soon. I'm also going to crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass and bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. But first, it's the latest news with Polly.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story tonight. The MP Crispin Blunt has been arrested on suspicion of rape and the possession of controlled substances. The member for Reigate identified himself on social media earlier today as the man Surrey Police had detained in Hawley yesterday morning. Well, Surrey Police has confirmed a man was released on conditional police bail pending their further inquiries. Mr Blunt has been removed from the Conservative Party and asked to stay away from Parliament. The former minister said, though, he'll cooperate fully with the ongoing police investigation and is confident he won't be charged. Meanwhile, in news concerning Egypt, the UK's border force is in the country, with the Prime Minister confirming officers have pre-positioned themselves to help British nationals escape Gaza when the border reopens. Cabinet ministers held an emergency Cobra meeting this morning to address the escalating crisis between Israel and Hamas. The government's pushing for a pause in fighting, rejecting calls for a complete ceasefire, they say, to facilitate aid reaching Palestinians. And this comes as leaders at an EU summit in Brussels have today called for humanitarian corridors to get urgently needed aid into Gaza. Well, the UN says the world is failing to meet the basic human needs of people in Gaza. Humanitarian Chief Martin Griffiths is warning that aid isn't getting into the Gaza Strip quickly enough and that Israel's bombardment is getting worse. UN aid agencies have begun to reduce their operations in the area because they say they've almost run out of fuel. Israel, for its part, refuses to let fuel supplies into Gaza because it says Hamas could use it for military purposes, and it insists it's still only targeting the terrorist group. In other news today, the Prime Minister warned that artificial intelligence could threaten humanity with extinction on a similar scale to global pandemics or nuclear war. His comments came after touring a London eye hospital which uses AI to diagnose sight problems. Rishi Sunak says humanity could lose control of AI and criminals and terrorist gangs could use it to spread fear and destruction. At the same time, he announced the formation of the world's first AI Safety Institute to be based in the UK and to explore the risks as well as sharing its data with the rest of the world. 2 medics were arrested today on suspicion of criminal damage after a Just Stop Oil protest at London's Natural History Museum. In front of dozens of shocked tourists, activists sprayed what they said was orange corn flour over a reproduction dinosaur skeleton. They then displayed a banner which read, "For health's sake, just stop oil." The incident comes just one day after the group staged a similar stunt at London's Grade 1 listed Wellington Arch, which resulted in 3 arrests. And lastly, Remembrance poppies will be plastic-free this year and recyclable in the first redesign of the iconic emblem in a generation. It's part of a move by the Royal British Legion to reduce the production of single-use plastics. From today, volunteers and supermarkets will be selling the historic symbol worn annually to honour the service and sacrifice of Britain's armed forces in conflicts over the decades. Each poppy sold raises money to support surviving veterans as well as serving personnel and is traditionally worn from the last Friday in October, which is tomorrow. I'm a little bit early with mine. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Busy hour coming your way. Tomorrow's news tonight now, though, in our media buzz. Well, let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. We start With the Metro, yes we do. So, end of the world is AI. Yeah, see what they're trying to do there. Not really hitting the mark, though. It's also because it's kind of a day old, this story, but the Metro have gone with it. The PM's stark warning for humanity. But don't panic yet, he insists. Look, the Prime Minister is very, very concerned about artificial intelligence and whether or not this could lead to the end of the world because it could create things like bioweapons and release, essentially, the plague onto us all. Which I think should be a concern. It just all feels too sci-fi film. Just on the side there, what you'll see as well is Tory MP Blunt's rape arrest. The full story there will be on page 7 in the Metro tomorrow. I'm going to go over to the Eye now. Look, right at the top of the Eye, the picture story is 200 Britons plead for Gaza rescue. Trapped British citizens urge UK government to help them before a ground invasion. So Brits in Gaza now trying to get out, trying to say, look, can we do more to get out? But the big story on the front, Tory turmoil as Blunt arrested over rape and drug claims. Strong stuff. It's strong stuff. MP Crispin Blunt reveals that he has been interviewed twice by police over the allegations, during which he reported concerns over, quotes, extortion. Tory MP for Reigate is confident that the investigation will end without charge. So there we go. Those are the 2 front pages that have landed so far. More to follow. My panel are back with me. Daily Telegraph columnist Allison Pearson. I've got GB News contributor Albie Amancona and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson as well. Top panel. So, do British kids really need to know and worry about the concept of white privilege? Well, BBC's Newsround producers certainly think so, after they were exposed for teaching kids about the theory in an online article. White privilege. What is it? And how can it be used to help others? Has led to an official complaint being lodged to the Beeb by campaign group Don't Divide Us. So they said white privilege is not a scientifically or logically proven concept, yet it is presented on your website as if it were a self-evident truth. And indeed it is, as we will go on to show you, because Professor Kehinde Andrews, a, well, so-called academic in so-called black studies, was interviewed for the article. We can have a little look at it.
White privilege is being able to not have to worry about racism. So you don't have to worry about whether the teacher's going to treat you badly because of the colour of your skin, or that's why you got stopped and searched, or you didn't get the job because you were black. And this is like the kind of daily experiences that we have to go through because of the way that racism works. So white privilege is the freedom to be able to not do that.
Right, OK. And Kehinde recently had a run-in on the BBC's Politics Live with one of tonight's panel. Isn't that right, Albie? Yes, it is, it is, it is. What?
So if you talk to anybody who works in these white institutions, they will tell you that having to tiptoe around and having to be... I have to watch how I am all the time in work because just in case I get seen to be the large, black, aggressive man. There's so many ways we have to go through this world because of what I call the psychosis of whiteness. It actually does impact our mental health quite significantly.
Albie, what's your response to that title particularly? Because some people would find it striking and strident.
Well, they might find it racist, indeed. I would go as far as saying that. I wonder how Kehinde would feel if Joe or Stella or Catherine were to write a book called The Psychosis of Blackness. I'm sure that Kehinde would call it racist, would you?
Absolutely done him. There we go. So, Albie, as BBC Newsround is exposed for teaching kids about white privilege, is the broadcaster indoctrinating British kids with its own woke ideology?
Gosh, well, I think watching those clips, I feel like I'm getting PTSD from my run-in with Kehinde Andrews. I honestly think this man is unwell. And he really does... Allegedly unwell. And he really does propagate, in my opinion, some quite dangerous things. You know, on a television show, a BBC television show called We Are Black and British, he essentially advocated for segregation. He was speaking about the fact that black people should be policed by other black people. I think on the Politics Live episode that we just watched, I was really shocked by something he said. Yeah. He basically inferred that black children don't benefit from going to school. And I said, are you suggesting that black children shouldn't go to school? And he said, well, looking at the evidence, I've got 4 black children, I'm just saying what the evidence says. So I think it's really concerning that the BBC get him to discuss these important issues as if he's some sort of factual authority on it.
I mean, it is fascinating. I mean, we have actually contacted Kehinde Andrews. He's not got back to us, clearly, so, you know, there's still time, though, Kehinde, if you're watching, which you obviously aren't, feel free to get on the show. Alison, I'll bring you in on this. When I had a look at this article, it had links at the bottom to all you need to know about Malcolm X, everything you need to know about George Floyd. There was a TikTok video on this as well, which was basically stating, white privilege is a fact. Now, when I was a child watching Newsround or going on, a Newsround website, I wasn't looking at things critically. I was going on there very innocently and absorbing the content and treating that as fact. So the BBC, I would argue, is trying to say to kids that that is fact.
Yes, BBC Newsround goes all the way back. GB News viewers, some of us are old enough to remember John Craven's Newsround. This is a trusted brand, a very trusted programme, and it's extremely disturbing because the BBC is supposed to be impartial. Now, as the Don't Divide Us pressure group who've complained are saying this is taught as if it's knowledge. It's not knowledge. It comes from critical race theory, and it is a highly political creed that is being proselytised through our institutions and clearly through children's programmes. And what this white privilege does is it impugns the majority of children in this country who are white British, and it patronises non-white children who don't need to be told that they're stuck in their situation. And as you said at the top of the programme, Patrick, who is the most educationally disadvantaged group in the country? White boys. So there are parts of this country, white working class boys. If you said to boys in the North East or my part of South Wales, you are a beneficiary of white privilege, they say, you what?
Show me your white privilege.
Show me your white privilege.
Nigel, are you privileged because you're white?
I don't feel it, but I believe it exists. So when I saw that, when I looked at this today, my view was, it was not woke ideology, it was an explainer. It was an explainer about what the concept of white privilege is. Mistakes that were made, the first one I thought was that this is a theory, not a fact. You're absolutely right. It comes across as this is out there, this is a fact, when it should, so there should have been a dissenting voice thrown in.
Yes.
Not sure that given that the age range that they're aiming for is 6 to 12, it's actually age appropriate. The principle behind it, I think, is right. And one of the reasons I do think that white privilege does exist is the fact that so many companies and public bodies now have to have diversity policies to deal with that.
OK, Al, we final word to you.
I think what I would say on white privilege is that you can explain the phenomenon of black and brown people, some black and brown people being disadvantaged without saying white privilege. And it tends to be a lot more, people understand it a lot more happier with that concept. But as soon as you talk about white privilege, even people that think racism is bad will just put their backs up and say, no, this is an outrageous concept. I don't feel privileged. So I would say to people like Kehinde, don't use the phrase white privilege, and what you say will go a lot further.
But what's a better phrase? What is a better way of describing this, then?
I would say a good way of describing it is that there are some people in this country who are disadvantaged because of their skin colour. You don't need to say you have white privilege.
There are some people in this country who are disadvantaged because of their economic, social status.
Yeah, but and this is the thing, there is a victimhood culture in this country amongst people, I would argue we had one of those human rights lawyers on earlier on. Everything was everybody else's fault. Everything is somebody else's fault. Then you look at this now, you could explain all your troubles away, couldn't you, if you can find somebody else to blame, and I think it diminishes people who are seriously disadvantaged in this country. I think it takes the edge off people who actually do have a genuine grievance in this country. But when we contacted the BBC earlier today, a spokesperson said this to us. This article was first published in June 2020 and has not been changed, claiming that the date stamp reading 28th of September this year was changed in error. It doesn't really make anything any better, does it? It just shows that more kids have maybe been indoctrinated by it for longer. But coming up, as a bombshell GB News poll shows as many as 30% of Brits think a transgender woman is a woman, are self-ID zealots winning the gender debate. Initially, that was bracketed only 30% of Brits. Only nearly a third of Brits. They walk amongst us, people. These people walking around there who think that transgender women are women. Anyway, my panel will return later this hour to thrash that one out. And next, I'm looking forward to this. Earlier tonight, I sat down with superstar Conservative US commentator Candace Owens. And that was an exclusive interview. She was no nonsense. I mean, she even had me balking at a couple of things, which says something, doesn't it? So there we go. She's talking about the trans madness ravaging both sides of the pond and much more. Look, that's next. You're going to want to see it. I'll see you in 2.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new
It's
teeth.
your new
I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Well, it's time now for a UK exclusive interview with superstar US commentator Candace Owens. And the best-selling author, talk show host, activist, has been a leading figure on the American right now for many, many years. Millions upon millions of followers across all of her social media platforms. The 34-year-old, can you imagine, by the way, sorry, it's 34, the amount that she's achieved, really, just recently broke the internet, as she often does, for taking down an army of woke students and members of the trans lobby at a university in Albany. Take a look.
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who feel actively victimized by your presence here?
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this.
Legend. Absolute legend. But when I sat down with her earlier on, I asked about the dangers of kids way younger than that, both here and across the pond, being taught in schools about extreme gender ideology. Take a look and listen. Not in schools. I actually fear, we have a saying in this country, don't we, that, you know, everything that starts in America comes to Britain very quickly afterwards. You guys lead the way, we follow, we lap it up. That also, unfortunately, I think means some of the bad stuff. And what's going on in schools with the trans issue is coming our way. It's here, but not quite as extreme, actually, as what you have to put up with. I love, by the way, that you rock up and just take these people head on, just let them expose themselves. I could do hours on that, actually. But should parents be informed, do you think, about what is being taught to their children in schools in terms of sex education material? And should they have to be told if their child goes into school and says, I want to be referred to as a different gender now? Because at the moment, parents don't have to know about that stuff.
So I don't want to mince words here. It's an issue that I care about deeply. Obviously, I've got a third child on the way. I'm 9 months pregnant right now, and my children are going to have to exist within this school system. And we are right now in a custodial dispute with the state over rights over our children, which is bizarre. In fact, I just covered on my show how in certain states they are now kicking parents out. Parents are no longer allowed to see what medical prescriptions are being given to their children once they turn 12. In certain states, right? So your kid has to make a profile and then they can see the doctor one-on-one, and mom and dad are not allowed to be there. So they are trying to pretend that children can make adult decisions at a very young age. And what we have seen in America is what they're doing in the classroom is introducing, you called it sex education. I have to tell you, we cannot call it that because that is how they are trying to hide this. This is not about education. This is not about sex. This is something much more nefarious that is going on. It is a very dangerous ideology. And what it leads to is death and suicide. Factually speaking, I've had so many detransitioners, as you call it, on my show, people that were given pills. One man who I'd like every person to look up and watch this interview named Walt Heyer. He is now 80 years old, went through with the bottom surgery. Truly what happened to him was he was molested by his uncle when he was 4. And made to wear a dress while he was being molested. And when he wanted to rinse himself of his identity, rather than a doctor saying, you need a psychologist, they gave him pills and helped him transition. And he went through and got all of the procedures. So you have this incidence of people who are not addressing underlying psychological issues. Some of it is just kids that in the way that you want to experiment and smoke a cigarette are like, well, I want to experiment and I want to say that I have a different identity. But what this is being backed by is a big pharma push. They are selling so many new drugs to transition children, something that is an impossibility at the end of the line. Lupron is the name of the drug in the US that they are giving to these children. Lupron is also used to chemically castrate pedophiles in prison. And my biggest fear in all of this is what it's leading to in this push to have children believing that they have the authority to make such a drastic decision at such a young age is that what's going to come down the pipeline is pedophilia. This is a very serious matter happening in America. The way at the speed at which it has perpetuated that this is now a front issue is unbelievable. It can happen overnight in the UK. Let America be a lesson for the UK. You have to deal in reality. And these conversations have to be happening now because children are being systematically harmed right now in the United States.
By definition, it is entering into conversation the sexualization of children. If you're talking about their gender and you're talking specifically about their genitalia, then that almost normalizes that kind of discussion and conversation because you hear it everywhere. And then, yeah, like you just said, it follows on that you go, well, this 5-year-old knows exactly what they're doing when it comes to gender. And that becomes a paedophile's playground, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they're already starting to say that there should be different terms. There are professors that are saying we shouldn't call them pedophiles. We should call them minor attracted persons. You can see this at the university level taking place in America, these sorts of people that are popping up. And even though they seem like they're on the fringe, I have said from the beginning that it is so obvious that the next thing that's going to come is pedophilia, because we no longer have the courage to call mental illness. And we are trying to become such a compassionate society that we're compassionate to the point of stupidity. And that's where we have arrived in America. I don't want this to happen in the United Kingdom. So I just want to be very clear here and not mince words. Stop this ideology. It is an evil ideology and children are being harmed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is the very most innocent end of this terrible spectrum, right? I think it is at the very least Munchausen by proxy for a lot of these parents who feel like their own lives are pretty dull, who want their child to be special and different and unique and maybe push that on them. But I don't think they realise, like you've just said there, what's coming down the line. And that in itself is child abuse anyway. Look, I've got one here about J.K. Rowling because she's been trolled on this issue massively. She's been attacked for her defence of these kind of issues, etc. How do you feel about J.K. Rowling and what she's done?
Well, I've forgiven her because I don't want to forget the J.K. Rowling that was very judgmental to conservatives in America who had a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome and didn't realize that the thing about the left is they will always eat their own. So she trumpeted every other issue. And then she finally found one where she wasn't really willing to get in line. And she said, no, actually, I'm a woman. And then the same person that they championed and loved and glorified, they sacked immediately, right? And they were willing to have her canceled and essentially to ruin her because she disagreed on one issue because they're remarkably intolerant. The left is what they are. So there's no room for having a difference in opinions. But I'm very happy she's there. You know, obviously, she's tremendously talented. She has a huge platform and she has stuck by her figurative guns in this capacity, so much so that the story of J.K. Rowling and the treatment of J.K. Rowling is something that can be learned from, you know? And so I am proud of her for doing this. And it has been horrific to watch these self-proclaimed feminists, a la Emma Watson, the person who was made essentially by the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, who says to the public that she's a feminist, how quickly she was willing to throw J.K. Rowling under the bus to help men, that say, I'm a woman on the inside, which is quite, it's amazing. All she does is talk about the patriarchy, talk about feminism. And then at the first opportunity that she had to actually be a feminist and to stand by a woman who has done so much for her, she threw her under the bus. And so that kind of gets into the category of the scam of feminism that I often talk about on my platform as well, because it has been rabid feminists that have been pushing this trans ideology. Really, honestly, kudos to J.K. Rowling because it takes bravery. It does take bravery to stand up to the mob and to say something that should be so abundantly obvious. Women are women and men are men, but we are living in a backward society where saying something as abundantly obvious and as abundantly true is difficult. It's difficult to say. People lose their entire careers and their livelihoods. So I'm very proud of the person that she is today because, as I said, this is a most crucial issue that will be at the forefront in the UK very soon, if it isn't already. And you're going to need leaders and people that have a backbone to stand up to it.
What a wise, wise woman. Look, on our YouTube, OK, you're going to be seeing a load more of that. That was just a snippet of the kind of stuff. Well, she spoke about mass migration. She spoke about Meghan and Harry. She spoke about absolutely all sorts. Go to our YouTube tomorrow. We've got loads more of that. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, Candace. But coming up in Uncancelled, a Steve Coogan brands monarchist flag-waving idiots. Well, I'm joined by our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, who are ready to set the lefty-lovey straight for those comments. Plus, we will discuss whether Netflix hit the Crown has handled the death of Princess Diana as sensitively as they promised. Don't miss it. But next, in the media buzz, as a bombshell GB News poll shows as many as 30% of Brits think a transgender woman is a woman, are self-ID zealots winning this gender debate? My panel will debate that in a few moments' time. See you in a sec.
I'm Andrew.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return now to tomorrow's News Tonight in our Media Buzz. More front page have just been delivered. Look, we start with The Sun. An incredibly strong front page. An incredibly strong front page. MP in rape and drugs arrest. Tory MP Crispin Blunt last night revealed he has been arrested on suspicion of rape and drug possession. The ex-minister, 63, has been suspended and must stay away from Parliament pending a police probe. I mean, it's less relevant, but there's some stuff about Taylor Swift and the Beatles on the front page as well. I'm not sure how many people are going to buy the paper for that. But we move on. We move on now. Next, we have The Guardian. MP Blunt arrested over rape and drug allegations. There we go. And the big picture story at the front there is an Al Jazeera journalist mourning his wife, son, daughter and grandson who were killed in an Israeli airstrike. So that's the picture. That's on the front of The Guardian. The story below that reads, Israel stages raid into Gaza as new phase of war begins. We move on again. We go to the Daily Express. Dementia cases to rise, but new drug offers hope. A stark warning that cases of dementia will soar over the next 2 decades comes amid hope and optimism the condition will become treatable. Look, it's a kind of an indictment, really, isn't it, of an ageing population, but also humans' abilities to kind of sort out problems, isn't it? So that's what that is. We also have the Conservative MP Crispin Blunt arrested over rape allegation and border force to rescue 200 Britons from Gaza. We have sent our border force to Gaza. I mean, that's great, isn't it? If you want a border opening, just send our border force. That's the way it goes, isn't it? Fantastic. Go to the Times now. 200 Britons trapped in Gaza plead for help. Look, we've just heard a bit about that. Same again with the dementia cases. They're going to double by 2040. Driven, it says, by poor lifestyles. I just wonder if that's a bit unfair. We're getting older, we're living longer, aren't we? But, yes, there we go. Halt imports of inhumane foie gras, says 9 in 10. Interesting this, I think, about the Times' readership, doesn't it? They feel as though they've been massively affected by dementia and that they also eat foie gras, you know. Maybe those two stories have got something in common there. Almost 9 in 10 people in Britain would support an import ban on foie gras. Yeah, fine, but the 1 in 10 who actually eat it wouldn't, would they? The Daily Telegraph, Putin welcomes Hamas to Moscow. They also go in on Crispin Blunt and a lot more as well. Right, OK, so those are the papers. You are welcome, wonderful people. But more on the media buzz now. With tonight's panel, I've got Daily Telegraph columnist Allison Pearson. I've got GB News contributor Albi Amankona, and I've got GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Let's have a little look, shall we, at another GB News shocking poll. And it's revealed that 30% of Brits think a transgender woman is a woman. 44% disagree with that statement. These bombshell new stats come just days after Suella Braverman demanded that the police stop calling transgender rapists women, amid warnings that it's factually incorrect and insensitive to victims. So, look, Alison, I've got to start with you on this. You know, do you think this shows that we are, in a way, going backwards psychologically, not actually being progressive? We're being regressive here.
Well, I think it's a huge... You just had Candace Owens, didn't you, very eloquently talking about the dangers to children. So I think this acceptance, trans women and women... First of all, I think, Patrick, I think people are very confused about this. This is often a man claiming to be a woman and calling himself a trans woman. And there are major safety issues here. We've seen rapists, haven't we, claiming in the midway through their trial for rape that they've decided to identify as a woman so they can go to a woman's prison. So there are major safety issues for women, and I think what's happening is a lot of people are saying it because it seems nice, and actually
because they're scared.
They're scared, but the repercussions, the implications of it for children and girls, particularly young girls who are increasingly influenced by this and are making life-changing decisions based often on a false prospectus, which can lead to tremendous trauma and upset.
Albie, I spoke to Belinda de Lucy earlier on. We know her, GB News viewers and listeners will know her, former Brexit Party MEP, political commentator. Belinda said to me that she's attended meetings with women's rights groups and with certain organisations where they've had to keep the location of those meetings secret until the very last moment, and where things like smoke bombs, etc., have been thrown in, and that has been done by what I call the trans mafia. And I think that that is why 30% of people are willing to suspend medical, biological and scientific logic and say that this man can be a woman because they're scared, no?
Look, one of the other hats I wear is as the Vice Chairman for the LGBT Conservatives. And there are members of the LGBT Conservatives who do believe that transgender women are women. And that is a 30% constituency of the UK population. That is a point of view that people have. We might not agree with it, but it's a point of view that people have. And I don't think it is necessarily helpful to be having a skirmish over this point. Transgender people exist. We need to find a way
But are they women? That's the thing, isn't it?
Transgender people exist, Patrick. We need to find a way to give them the dignity and respect that they deserve, whilst at the same time maintaining women's rights and safety for children and all of that, children's safeguarding. I think there's a way forward. I don't think it's always helpful to have these skirmishes over whether or not a transgender woman is a woman. A transgender woman is a transgender woman. There is a difference between a woman and a transgender woman, and difference isn't bad.
I just think we need maybe more labels, not trying to squeeze everybody into the same label. Nigel, if we play the tape forward on this, it stands to reason that in the decades to come, that 30% is going to become 40%, is going to become 50%, and before you know it, society thinks that trans women are women, and therefore...
Which I do.
You do?
Yes.
So if I put a dress on, right?
Yeah.
And walked into a changing room with your wife, you'd be all right with that?
No,
Right.
and I go along with the official government position about a transgender woman being a woman, which is that that's the Gender Recognition Act. And what that says is that if you have lived in your acquired gender for 2 years and you've been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, you can now change your birth certificate, your passport, your driving licence to be a woman. And in my view, that makes you a woman. Now, it doesn't make you legally a biological woman, which is why safe spaces are still protected. So you can't simply walk into a woman's loo, although you could go into a unisex...
Because then the onus is on the company itself to then throw you out. At which point it's too late.
They would have a right to actually do that. Obviously, you can walk into a unisex loo, into a gender-neutral loo.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right. Yes, I mean, a company could throw you out. They may not. You could argue that that's too late. But that is the situation.
But Nigel, this used to be a small percentage of mainly boys, almost entirely boys, who thought that they were born in the wrong body and transitioned and went through... I've got a particular friend who's gone through a tremendous process of surgery and pain and so on to become a woman. We're not talking about that now. We are talking about an absolute explosion, particularly amongst young people, where parents are terrified that their daughters or sons are suddenly announcing, because of stuff they've heard at school and on TikTok and on all these websites, that they want to, bind their breasts, have drastic surgery, have hormones, life-altering hormones. So we are not talking about just being nice to transgender people. Transgender people are a significant significant and a minority that demands absolute equal treatment and respect.
Okay.
But we are talking about a social explosion which is impacting young kids who particularly are probably gay.
You take it gently. You don't have to have surgery. And the whole point is you can identify as a woman, you can be officially designated a woman without the surgery.
Look, all of you, thank you very, very much. We obviously could have spoken at length about that. No doubt we will again very, very soon. It's one of those issues, isn't it? But coming up, should Dame Allison Rose keep her big payout? I'll get the views of my panel in the Greatest Britain Union Jackass, find out who takes home those prizes shortly. But next, as Steve Coogan brands monarchist flag-waving idiots, I am joined by our royal masterminds. This is a lot of people's favourite part of the show, so stay tuned. Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, the gin to her tonic, or should that be the other way around, who are ready to bash the lefty lovey for his outrageous comments. Plus, we will discuss whether Netflix hit The Crown has handled the death of Princess Diana as sensitively as they promised. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. It's time now for my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And speaking on the Off-Menu podcast, left-wing lovey and Alan Partridge star Steve Coogan's caused outrage by labelling supporters of the monarchy, which is the majority of Brits, by the way. In fact, it's 2/3 of Brits. Flag-waving idiots. Watch this.
I am an anti-monarchist. Most of the people who are into it all, those flag-waving plastic boater people, are just, I think, are kind of idiots because they support a power structure that keeps a foot on the throat of working-class people.
Yeah.
And I'm just not very keen on that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, there we go. So, Lady C, I will start with you. Is this Coogan's very own Alan Partridge moment, do you think?
Well, I know he's a comedian, but I can also say he's an idiot as well as and a joke. You know, labelling 2/3 of the British population's idiotic when he's the idiot. He must have been looking in the mirror. I mean, does he not realise how totally offensive he is? And what's this rubbish about him taking up for the working classes? Most of the working classes are in favour of the monarchy. So is he taking up for the working classes at the very moment he calls them idiots? I mean, the man is a joke.
OK, that's your view. Phil, I'll bring you in now. You know, what do you reckon to what he said there? That the majority of people who support the royals are essentially flag-waving idiots.
Yeah, good evening, Patrick, or should I say, aha.
I've always wanted to do that. No, I'm a great fan of it. I'm a great fan of his work, actually, but he does come up with some very strange things. I mean, his Lady C says to brand 35, 40 million people idiot is absolutely ridiculous. It's not a class issue at all. I mean, all the polls show that people across all classes support the monarchy, although I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who want to get rid of it. But the thing that surprises me is he didn't have a good word to say about King Charles. I would have thought some of the things that King Charles said would be right up Coogan's street. But apparently the only thing he likes about him is the Dutchy original orange juice. So I'm not quite sure how that works.
Yeah, I mean, look, standing up for the working classes, right? This guy's owned a fleet of Ferraris in his time. You know, I think it's widely perceived as enjoyed the company of some rather elegant ladies and shops at Waitrose, right? I mean, forgive me, but he's not your normal bloke who throws darts down the pub, is he? I mean, come on. Lady C, he called the Queen all right. She was better than all right, wasn't she?
Oh, yes, of course she was better than all right. But, you know, praise from him, that is high praise indeed from him. So I suppose she's all right as everybody else is. And remember, most of the world thought that the Queen was the most wonderful head of state and that she was the most revered head of state on earth, justifiably because of her conduct. So I suppose if he says it's all right, we should maybe genuflect in his direction.
I'm sure he would probably want that quite deep down. Yeah, I mean, Phil, I just wonder with him whether or not he's part of this cohort of kind of self-hating multi-millionaire Brits. And we speak about flag waving, don't we? I mean, he'd probably drape himself in things like the Palestinian flag. There's a fair bit of hypocrisy here, isn't there?
The thing the Republicans never tell you is what they would replace the monarchy with. I mean, you know, we'd have a clapped-out politician, probably someone like Tony Blair or John Major.
Yeah,
that doesn't appeal to me at all. And
there's a risk. Seriously, sorry, folks, but you know, there's a risk. The way that these politicians rehabilitate themselves, the risk we'd end up with balls.
Yeah, if it's working, why fix it? I think, you know, most people, it's been going 1,000 years. It's got its faults, of course it has. You probably wouldn't start with a system like that, but it works for most people, and they rally around it. And they're not going to rally around someone like Tony Blair.
No, not again. Anyway, if I could go back in time. Now, the hit Netflix series, The Crown, had promised they would handle the death of Princess Diana, quote, sensitively. And the full trailer for the new season has just dropped. I believe we can have a little look and a listen, and then I will get your reactions as to whether or not Netflix are keeping their words. Take it away.
Don't really understand how I ended up here. Dashing around.
Set against a background of raw emotion, the royal family remains silent.
What do people want from me?
For you to be mother to the nation.
Gosh, OK. Lady C, should they be touching on it at all? I suppose they have to.
I'm a ghost. I mean, no, it's ridiculous. But having said that, it is ridiculous that they would have her as a ghost, or Diana as a ghost, and, you know, speaking to the Queen and sort of maybe giving the Queen directions from whether it's heaven, hell, or purgatory is beside the point. The fact of the matter is that, putting that aside, I actually think that Netflix does things beautifully. You know, the Diana girl is a really wonderful evocation of Diana.
Yes.
She's very convincingly Diana. And they film it beautifully, and I think, you know, it's really top grade entertainment. The problem is, of course, it bears little or no relationship to the truth, and they push their own agenda. And I mean, people don't realize it, but Peter Morgan's father-in-law was Prince von Unzu-Schwarzenberg, whose palace in Vienna is the same size as Buckingham Palace is in London. So, I mean,
there we go.
Hypocrisy that's involved.
Absolutely. I can't just say, Lady C, I would love to go on a night out with you. I think it would just be one of the most hilarious experiences in my life. But, Phil, final comment from you now. Do you think that this is fine? Is it appropriate? What Lady C was talking about there is later on, they show Diana as a ghost.
Well, she's absolutely right. Elizabeth Debicki is fantastic. I mean, the voice there is incredible. I don't normally watch The Crown. I might look at this one. I think if it actually shows the story, because it does actually lead up to her tragic death, if it actually shows that in a factual way, especially coming to a new audience of young people, it could be a good thing. If it doesn't focus on the conspiracy theories and it keeps to the facts, that could be a good thing. But, yeah, it looks sensationally done and she looks brilliant.
Both of you, thank you. I absolutely love you two. I'll see you again very, very soon. Take care. OK, now... Right, loads more on the agenda because it is time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. There it is. There it is. I will get that bit of the show right one day. OK, all right. So I've got my panel with me here now, don't I? Allison, who's your Greatest Britain?
TV presenter Rachel Riley, she signed the October Declaration, sticking up for the right of British Jews to live without fear. And Rachel also called on the BBC to call Hamas exactly what they are, terrorists. And you can sign the October Declaration.
OK. I think we can show a bit what you're talking about there.
Supporting Hamas in support of the Palestinian people is equivalent to supporting the Taliban in support of Afghans. It's incompatible with their freedom, with being able to live their lives peacefully, which is what any decent person on this planet wants.
OK, off to a fly there with Rachel Riley. Albie, who is your Greatest Britain?
So my Greatest Britain this week is our colleague, of course, Nigel Farage. It's not a man I've always agreed with politically, but I have to say, I think his exposé of the NatWest debanking scandal, Coutts debanking scandal, is excellent. It's really difficult to expose these institutional decisions that are made behind these closed doors with men and women in white suits, and Nigel's managed to do it, and my commendations and hat off to him.
Fair enough. Nigel?
Mine's the Royal British Legion for doing their bit to save the planet by getting rid of plastic from poppies and giving us this, which is a paper poppy.
Useless.
My only warning about it is it is very difficult to actually get on, and I had to get the poppy seller to do it for me.
All right, OK, right. So today's Greatest Britain is Nigel Farage. Of course it is. It was always going to be Nigel. But can I just say, watch this space about the Royal British Legion, because I've got a couple of things planned in the fundraising department there, which I'll bring to you next week. Right, OK, Union Jackass, quick fire, people. Go on, Alison.
BBC Newsround supposed to provide fun, factual content for children, not make the majority of white British children think that being white is shameful.
Yep, spot on. Albie, go on.
Linked to what Alison has just said, my Union Jackass is my Politics Live sparring buddy, Kehinde Andrews, because of his dangerous and divisive views on British race relations, which need to be challenged.
Go on, Nigel, round us off.
It's that idiot Steve Coogan for calling flag-waving royal fans idiots.
You hate him. I don't know what he's done to you, right? Seriously, there's something here from 20 years ago down the pub. He said something to you. Anyway, right, OK, the Union Jackass is BBC Newsround. Although I'm regretting that now. I think we should have gone for Coogan, shouldn't we? Right, BBC Newsround. Look, well done, everybody. Thank you very, very much. Fantastic panel, as ever. Fantastic viewers, fantastic listeners. Much love to you all. I will be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. and we are going to have a rip-roar of a show there. I wish you all a fabulous evening. We have headliners coming your way. We've seen a little glimpse of the front pages, haven't we? They will also take a good, hard look inside those papers. There's not another show like Headliners, OK? So make sure you stay tuned and you'll be able to tell all your mates tomorrow that you're way ahead of the game because you know all of the news. I'll see you tomorrow at 3. Much love, everybody.
Good evening, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It could be a bit foggy for some of us tonight, but there is further wet and blustery weather to come through the rest of the week. Low pressure sitting just to the west of the UK is bringing a showery, blustery theme to many parts of the UK. However, it's a front across the northeast that's already brought persistent rain for some here and will continue to do so across eastern parts of Scotland overnight. Cloud towards eastern parts of England will lower, bring some murkiness, some fog fog for some here, and elsewhere clear spells allowing for some fog patches to develop too. But temperatures not dropping a huge amount overnight, many places holding up in high single digits. So some fog, some mist around first thing on Friday morning. That will gradually clear. Persistent rain continuing across eastern parts of Scotland, likely to cause some further issues. Otherwise, it's a day of showers for many, starting off around western and southern coastal parts, but spreading inland as we go into the afternoon, and some of them could be heavy, possibly even thundery. Temperatures around average for the time of year, highs of around 15 Celsius in the south, a little bit cooler than this further north. Staying showery as we go through into Saturday, and some of those showers could still be heavy at times, most likely towards the southeast, where we're likely to see some impacts from those. Also more rain across eastern parts of Scotland, totals really continuing to build up as we go through the weekend. More unsettled weather then to come as we go through the weekend into the beginning of next week, but also something a little bit colder in the north. Bye-bye.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.